Alright, so I have recorded this entire video before, but about 5% of the way through, I completely muted my mic on OBS and just lost all the audio. So I'm recording it again. Basically, in the last intro, before it got cut out, I was explaining that what I want to do for the channel going forward is a thing called eras, where I basically, every time I have a major timeline come out, because they are so far and few between, I want to really make like the next month after that video comes out all about that one topic. So I'll do streams about it, and I will do members only content covering it. Not only that, but mostly. And then I would do shorts and community posts just all about that. So I really just capitalize on that entire audience, and it just, allows me to just fully envelop myself in not just the story and the research, but also just the community as a whole, and just really build that side of things. For Attack on Titan specifically, I can't really do that because like copyright issues. So I'm gonna be doing that for the next video, which is Subnautica for those who don't know. But for this specifically, I do still have some members only videos that I really want to do, and I might end up doing shorts. It all depends because there's like the whole copyright thing, and that was really annoying for the timeline, so I don't want to have to keep doing that stuff. But specifically for this, I'm gonna do a tier list of all the best characters in AOT. As you can see, I took out a lot of the more minor ones, and what that basically means is this list is not from the best characters of all time to the worst characters, poorly written, I absolutely hate them. This is more I love them and they're perfect in every way to they're just annoying. Well, and actually, let me just, where is he? Yeah. So spoilers, I'm not a huge fan of Flock, and I'll get into it a little bit later. I'm not gonna actually ignore it. I'll explain it at the end of the video. But yeah, F is just gonna be really for Flock because when I recorded it last time, that was the only person who actually landed in F. But yeah, other than that, let's just jump right into it and start off with Annie. I think Annie is just a B tier character. She's a very solid character, and she might go as high as A if she wasn't gone for most of the series. She's there all throughout season 1, and then about, I don't know, maybe the last third, maybe even half of season 4. But maybe when she is there, she gets a lot of development, and I do really like her character, how she's kind of this character who has no ties to the world, and then both her and her dad end up caring about each other, and then that finally gives her like a reason to do the bad things that she's doing because she's never cared about anything before. So when she finally does care about her dad, she's kind of willing to do anything to keep that going. And I think that's really well done, but overall, I think that she doesn't have as much development as some people that are in there the entire thing. Speaking of which, Armin, easily S tier character. He's a little annoying at first, I will admit, and he's kind of just a bitch, but then he becomes like, he learns to rely on his intelligence and use that as his like greatest strength. And then he becomes like a pretty dependable leader who learns to take risks. Well, he's also very compassionate and he's very hopeful. But yeah, overall, I think he's like the epitome of where Erwin is a little, I guess you could call him selfish. Armin is really, really selfless, and he is very intuitively compassionate. Speaking of which, we have Falco, and Falco is another character who I think just, like, you get his character right off the bat. He just kind of gets it. The whole dilemma between, like, the Eldians and the Marleyans, he just intuitively, again, understands that it's not really any of their faults, that he really just wants to do good things, so why wouldn't there be other people out there in the world who also just want to do good things? Is he doing good things because he's because he's an Eldian who was raised in Marley? No, I think he just understands that. I think just some people really want to do good things and some people just do bad things, and it's not about where they were born or what they look like. Just some humans are different than other humans. And I'm just going to bring Gabi up here just right now because I think where Falco is a character who you have to, like, he intuitively gets it. Gabi is a character where she was forced to understand that. Like, that was, like, forced on her. She just didn't get it until it was something that she like had to understand, until she was pushed into that world and truly like understood it. And I think one thing that a lot of people misunderstand about Gabi specifically is that is like, in a meta way, what you have to do to understand Gabi and to forgive her for what she did to Sasha. A lot of people really, really hate Gabi because she's just like a horrible character. She killed Sasha. Sasha was so innocent and so great. And while that is true, I really love Sasha. You kind of have to understand that it's not really Gabi's fault. And you have to, like how she forgave like the Eldians of Paradis, you have to kind of forgive her, understanding that it's like the greater world that did that to her. And if she, was born anywhere else, she would be a completely different character. So actually, for that reason, I put her in B because I didn't want to spoil it. But I think she's an A tier character. I think that if you're so shallow that you cannot forgive her for killing Sasha, you didn't really get the point of her character. But I also get that, if Sasha's your favorite character, I get why you'd feel bitter. And I kind of am doing the same thing to Floch down here, but we'll talk about that later. Grisha is a character that I absolutely love because I love when characters aren't really there for most of like the show, for example, or the story, but they have a huge impact on it. Like, you can feel their ghost throughout the entire story. One reason I really love the bear is because Mikey plays a huge part of that story, and he's not even there. Like, you see him at some parts, of course, but mostly it's just people telling stories about Mikey. Hey, what did Mikey do to, impact the current story? All that type of stuff. I love that, and that's one thing that, while Grisha's a little bit more involved than, let's say, someone like Mikey, he's still there. You feel like he's this mastermind throughout the entire show, and then that changing to where, nope, he's just another tragic character. Absolutely brilliantly well done. I love it so goddamn much. So I'm actually going to put Connie and Sasha together because I do feel like you don't have to, but you could talk about them way easier when you put them together. So that's what I'm going to do. One thing I really like about their dynamic is, a lot of people talk about it, but I really like how they are boy and girl, but they're not necessarily in a romantic relationship. I love that a lot. They just feel like really good friends, or even kind of like siblings. And that's one thing that I don't know why, I absolutely love. I also like how it feels like the beginning of the story is a little more focused on like Sasha, while the end is a little bit more focused on Connie, and you kind of see him sort of in a way pick up where she left off. I think that's like really well done, and I don't know, I love how they're each their individual characters, but they go together as a pair, and it just works so well in the story. I also, side note, love the dynamic between these four. I think that this dynamic, them two being like a pair, these two being a pair, and then all four of these people being like in one weird, like, I don't know what you would call it, like not like a love triangle, it's more like a hate square, is like, I think it's really well done, and I like it a lot. Historia, I think, to me, is a very, very underrated character. Where some people might put her in like B or C, I'm putting her straight into A. I think that she's one thing I really like about her character is that she's a reluctant leader. And that's something I really like about characters in general when they do that really right, because I think that while she is like her own independent person, and she's very intelligent, very compassionate, very independent, she also understands that it's not all about her, and that she has to put some of her own interests aside to help like the greater good. And I also love how she doesn't give up. One thing that I really, really like is that even when Paradis starts to become like militaristic and very imperial near the end of the show, she doesn't give up on her people. She still wants to be there because she wants to help from the inside. She understands that she loses all control if she just kind of gives up and says, not my fault. No, she still wants to have some control over the situation, because she understands that she's, like, she just is a morally good character. She doesn't want to give up on people. And that's something that I really like. Eren, not gonna have to say anything more than just top of S. Eren is the greatest antagonist and protagonist in almost any show I've ever watched. He's incredibly good. He's not my favorite character of all time. That would probably go to Zuko, but I absolutely love Eren's character as a whole. I think the way that, one thing I really, really appreciate is what I don't like a lot of the times in that whole, protagonist to antagonist like arc that a lot of characters have, is they'll end up losing their empathy. And I think that is not the way to do it. What you really want to do is you want them to keep their empathy, but it kind of just changes. So for Eren, it doesn't necessarily change, but you see that as he gains more and more influence and power, he has empathy. It's just not for everyone. He really has empathy for his friends and the people of Paradis. And because he has so much empathy for them, he's willing to put everyone else on the line to save the people he really cares about. And that's how you do that arc. And I think that's what's incredibly well done about his character and why I follow him and I'm very sympathetic towards him through the very end. Even when I disagree with him, I get when people do agree with him, even though killing the entire world is a little fucking crazy. Kind of sticking with the whole what theme do I love about this character, I really like the push and pull Erwin has between selflessness and selfishness. I love that theme so much in stories. So I think Erwin really just embodies that. He's a super noble character, but he's not all selfless. Because like you see near the end of his arc, he really, really is willing to put everything on the line to where he can, he wants to reach the finish line with everyone else. And then it's not until the very, very end when he's like, you know what, for humanity's sake, it can't be me to reach the finish line. It has to be Armin who takes the syringe, because ultimately, it's not just about me. Because he could have taken the syringe, but he knew in his mind that Armin is just better than him, and he's able to make better calls, and he's more compassionate, and he's more selfless. And so he takes one selfless act, killing himself basically, to, give Armin the reins, and Armin, he knew he would take him further. I rambled on a lot about that, but you know what I mean. I love this character. Incredible. Kind of going off of that, again, Jean has that exact same arc, A tier. I love that he has that choice between, do I seek comfort or, am I going to literally I have to give up my comfort and give up what I want for everything else, for the betterment of humanity, and it's probably going to get me killed, and honestly nothing might come of it. It might I might just die and it was all not worth it. But he thinks of it and he's like, if I truly think I'm the best, should I really be just sitting at a desk as an MP, or should I, just go out and be a scout and try to, help humanity reach its full potential? And then near the end, same whole dilemma with the Eldian Empire, the new Eldian Empire. He's like, do I just sit down and let the new Eldian Empire go and let Eren destroy the world and whatever? Or, I'll probably feel like shit, so maybe I'll just fucking roll up my sleeves. I'm going to take it. I'm just going to go and try to do what's right for the entire world. I love it a lot. Jean, goated character, even though he looks like a horse. Ymir is one of those characters that I don't have a whole lot to say about, because really she gets her spotlight in season 2, and because season 2 is only 12 episodes, she doesn't get a whole lot of, she doesn't get as much as everyone else, and I think that to me is going to put her C tier. She's not a bad character by any means, but personally, if I'm staying true to myself, I don't really have a ton of connection to her. I think, and again, this is something I was kind of concerned about in the timeline video. I think you might have been able to kind of see that, but I think that her character is more a compliment and what makes Astoria so good. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily make her all that much better, but I probably could really do a deep dive into her character and end up loving her. But overall, right now, I think that she's a good character, solid, but nothing crazy that I have anything to say about. Hannes, I think, is also going to be another C tier character, and again, it's just because he doesn't really have all that much screen time, and his arc is fairly simple. He wasn't really that brave in episode 1, and then end of season 2, he becomes brave, and it is more complex than that. But, you know, I think overall, just not as much development as anyone else to put him any higher than C, in my opinion, but that doesn't make him a bad character. Hanji is an instant A tier character, which I think, just like Historia, she has that whole reluctant leader thing going on. Absolutely love it. I would just, basically, if I kept talking about her, I would just be retreading stuff I said about Historia, so that's all I'll say. Love her character, A tier. Bert and Ernie Burrito Bert from Severance. I think this guy, this starts with a B, I'm gonna put him C tier. Again, not because he's bad, but just I think like Reina really does just outshine him. And he is he is a pretty passive character. Like, he's kind of just going with the flow, and Reina's kind of feels like he's leading charge and Bertolt's just there for the ride. And unfortunately, when that starts to end, when Bertolt starts to really kind of like, I'm gonna do what I want to do and I finally understand it, he dies like the next episode. So I think overall he just doesn't get enough of that development to put him any higher. Now, there's not a whole lot to say about Willy, but I think I'm gonna put him C tier just because like he's only in a few episodes. But I will say what I do really like about his character, that in those few episodes he does like, he has this whole charismatic vibe, and that paired with the fact that he's a pretty selfless character and he really does want what's best for the world. He just doesn't want the world to end toward, you know, because of the rumbling. I think he's just a really solid, good character. Just one thing I really love about him is his dub of voice actor. I think he does an incredible job of really like shining that charismatic leader vibe like through his character. It's just it's good. Now, if before making the Attack on Titan timeline, you were to ask me what I think about Kenny, I probably would put him C. I probably wouldn't care all that much. But after doing some research like into the timeline itself, I actually really like Kenny as a character. I like him a lot. When a lot of people told me when I was getting into AOT, they're like, oh, season 3, that's when Kenny shows up. I was kind of disappointed because I was like, oh, he's like he's cool, I guess. Like, he's a cool character, but he's more, to me, felt like a stepping stone for Levi. And then doing research for the timeline, I understood like his arc and his character a lot more. I do respect his character and, you know, what he has done a lot more, and I think that he is overall pretty interesting, and I just didn't give him enough credit. And I feel I'm probably projecting this onto everyone else, but now I feel like he's maybe a little bit of an underrated character, and people who say they like him just like him because he's badass and not because he did go down a pretty interesting he had some interesting development. Mikasa, again, don't have to say it, this trio is one of the most goated trios of all time. I don't know, you might not be on TikTok, but if you know that whole audio where it's like, one will be a monarch who will Buddha, one will be a murderer, and one will be mad or whatever. Blood is the monarch, Blood is the murderer, Blood is mad. Because I feel like that just represents them so well. And I've seen multiple edits about that. And that, I love that. I don't know if you'll call it a trope, but I like that a lot. And I think Mikasa, just talking about her character specifically, the one thing that I don't like about her character that I'm going to say right off the bat is I feel like because I did a lot of research about how the manga and the anime differ, because I wanted to make a definitive timeline. So I was like, okay, maybe if there's some moments in the manga that are better than the anime, maybe I'll like combine the two, kind of have this weird combination timeline lore video. But overall, they're pretty similar. And I think one of the step downs, though, is in Mikasa's character. I think Mikasa in the manga is a lot more independent, and she kind of exudes that more badass, like, I'm gonna do what I want energy than in the show, where she kind of feels a little bit more like, a little more passive and kind of just like, okay, Eren, I'll do what you want. Where in the manga, that's not really her character at all. And that's one thing that I think might maybe make some people put her down here, but Mikasa to me is, I think, a goated character regardless of that. And I think that as the show goes on, she does definitely get better. She starts off kind of, again, just like, okay, Eren, I'll do what you want. But she's also the most badass character in the entire show. And she ends up being the heart of the entire show. All three of these people are the heart of the entire show. But Mikasa, overall, like Ymir, seeing Mikasa and Eren's relationship and seeing that Mikasa doesn't have to do everything for Eren in order to love him, incredible. I fucking love that. I think it is so well done. And Mikasa, that being like the, not really a twist, but that being like the major like theme of the show is that Mikasa was the key to all of it. Awesome. I fucking love it, because the whole theme about the show is like one of the many major themes is about love. And I think that is just so well done. It's so weird. I have so much I want to say about it, and I did in like the last recording, so I'm trying not to like, dig up all the old things I said. But yeah, overall, great character. And there's so much to say that I'm forgetting everything. Now, for a lot of people, Levi is their favorite character in the entire show. And that's the same for me, because I absolutely love Levi. And I think that that's because I often call him like the Batman of Attack on Titan. He just has like kind of, he on like a surface level analysis, he's very simplistic. He's just like, I'm the badass character who's just, I'll solo everyone in the verse. But like, if you go a step deeper, I think he's still incredibly interesting character. All the trauma in his past, I think there being a reason why he's short. I fucking love that for some reason. And then his whole arc where he's like, he has dedicated his heart to Erwin, and then he wants to carry out what Erwin does. And he kind of seems like he's just a right-hand man, but really I think he's a person who set his ego aside because he understood that there's other people in the world that want what's best for humanity. And so he's following them as his own kind of way to, his own way to kind of do what's right for the world is to follow the people who he trusts and not necessarily try to lead everyone else. And I think that's what I love about his characters. So Yelena, I'm going to put her D tier, not because she's a bad character, but because she low-key honestly freaks me out. I don't know why, she's just kind of uncanny. It's like, especially that moment in season 4 where she like stares down at I think it's Jean or Connie or something like that. But when she stares down at him, she's a weirdo, bro. I don't know. She gives me some weird vibes. But that's my whole analysis. So Marco, dude, unfortunate what happened to Marco. Also unfortunate. I'm gonna have to probably put him. Okay, I'll put him C tier because he's a good guy. And, I like the speech he gives to Jean where he's like, hey, man, I think that you're a good leader, not because you're super strong and cooler than all of us. It's because you know what it's like to be weak. I think that's a really good speech. Unfortunately, he dies like the next episode or that same episode, so he doesn't really get much more development. And a lot of people, me included, watch the show for the first time and everyone's like, oh no, Marco died. And I am sitting there like, yeah, Marco, we all know Marco. I don't fucking know who Marco is. But on rewatches, rewatching it, of course, you kind of pick up on that. You're like, oh yeah, that guy. And you get to actually pay attention to him. I think that it becomes a lot more clear and it becomes a bit of a better character. It's unfortunate that he died. I would have liked to see more of Marco. Now, I think I'm going to put Porco in C tier because I, again, don't think he gets enough development, and he kind of is just a bitter person. He feels like he deserved Reina's armor, and he definitely did because his brother, Marcel, kind of got Reina to take it because he didn't want Porco to die. It's the whole thing. Go watch the timeline. But overall, I think that he's kind of bitter towards that, and the fact that he kind of just gives Reina this middle finger where he's like, you're not dying, I'm dying at the very end, that kind of redeems him a little bit, makes him kind of a cooler character. But overall, there's not really, in my opinion, much to say about Porco. It's, again, one of those characters that you could probably do a deep dive into and really find interesting, but I didn't end up doing that. So I think he's fine. Now, I'm actually going to talk about Shadis and Magath at the exact same time because I think by design they are very similar characters. One of them led all the children and the warriors in Marley, and then the other led the cadets and all those, not the scouts, but the soldiers in Paradis. And that's the entire point, is both of these are people that have seen the result of their work, and they're very proud of the people that they helped. And they both understand that it's like they both wanted to do great things, and they, like say that they wanted to do what's best for everyone, but they also kind of just understand that it's not ultimately about them. Like, they are leaders to help the people who they basically raised be the best people they can be, not to make themselves better necessarily. And then the fact that just the end of their arc, they get together and they finish their arc together by blowing up the boat and doing exactly what their arc is, which is to sacrifice their own life to make the people they're teaching better. I think it's great, and it's really, really well done. Pieck is a character that doesn't get much of an arc, kind of like Porco. They're both the warriors that were introduced like in season 4 way later than everyone else. But I am actually going to put Pieck a little higher because I think she's kind of badass. And the fact that she's like the Cart Titan and you're like, what the fuck, the Cart Titan? Who gives a shit about the Cart Titan? That seems like a weak one. But then she ends up being actually pretty badass, is I think really cool. She's very intelligent and she is extremely like determined. And I think that that's like a part of why she was picked to be the Cart Titan, is because she's determined and she has that endurance. So overall, I love her character, that she's not necessarily a warrior and she's not like a diehard Marleyan, but she understands that the alternative is, Paradis destroying the world. That's why she's fighting for Marley, and because she trusts the people that she's working with and not necessarily trusts the institution and the government that is Marley. I think that just lines specifically in season 4, I think really just nudges her over and up to B tier. Reiner is just going straight to S tier. I think you can definitely tell in my timeline, I absolutely love Reiner's character. He's one of those characters that I think you watch the show the first time through and you kind of feel like he like his character is a little confusing because he has that whole like, I guess, split personality thing going on. Reiner, I'm putting straight into S tier. I think that Reiner is one of those characters that if you watch the show for the first time through, you'll like his character, but you might also kind of find it a little bit confusing. And something that I had to do for the timeline is really try to iron out Reiner's character and really do a deep dive and try to understand him. And I absolutely adored doing that because it's something that I just personally was compelled to do. But it's also something I had to do. But I think that him being this tragic character who has to literally fragment his personality because, a lot of people say like, oh, if you want to be someone, you gotta act like that. You kind of have to fake it till you make it. And that's just what Reiner does. He literally is like, okay, you want me to be Marcel? Fuck it, I'm gonna be Marcel. And then he just acts like Marcel. Like, he just plays a character. He just becomes an actor. And then he gets lost in that role. And I think that that's a very interesting character to have. And I think that that's incredibly well done. And it's not super obvious your first time through, but rewatching it, that coming up over and over again, and him having to do that multiple times, and like having to jump between the two where he has to learn to become one or the other. And then by the end of the show, he just kind of combines them all and says, no, I am Reiner, the Reiner Titan. I think it's really well done. I love his character, really great. Last but not least, we have Zeke, and I'm just going to put him straight up in S tier because he's just an S tier character. Again, like I said with Eren, I don't want to like retread what I've already said, but he doesn't lose his empathy. And that's one thing that I really, really like about his character, is that it could have so easily been that he hates Grisha, so therefore, and Grisha loved Eldians, so therefore he hates Eldians. But instead, he has so much empathy towards his own people, and honestly, he's just objectively a pretty, like, compassionate, empathetic person that he decides that he's gonna try to do he's gonna try to end bloodshed in the most like compassionate way possible, and there is no real good way to do that. So, you know, his way is the only way he can think of, and I think that's what makes like the end dilemma of the entire show or series so compelling, is that Zeke is a man of compromises, and it's again not perfect, but Eren is a man of extremes, and neither of them are perfect, but one is like, that's horrific, how the hell could you do that? And the other one is like, well, how the hell could he do that? And I don't know. I think that both of them being not equally bad, but bad in different ways, and the fact that you can't pick a correct one is what I think makes the end dilemma so interesting. I absolutely love that they're like brothers and they have this parallel arc. I think that it's really well done. And I've tried to say this multiple times, and I end up just rambling forever and ever because I want to talk so much about them, but I will leave it off at that. But yeah, that is my entire tier list. As you can see, it's very top heavy, but unless you just don't like the show or you're incredibly critical of like every little detail, I think this is how most people's are gonna look. Especially if you take out a bunch of the minor characters that I just didn't really have anything to talk about. But yeah, I think overall, if I had one thing I had to say is that if there was an SS tier, these three would definitely go above. These three are just the entire like heart and everything about the show, and I think that they are the most deserving of like a step above the rest of them. But other than that, I have a few, like 1 or 2 more plans for members only Attack on Titan videos. I had a few other ones, but those required me to use footage, so I just can't end up doing that. But other than that, I think look out for the Attack on Titan reaction video that I'm going to do pretty soon. And yeah, I think I'm going to make one more members only video this weekend to make up for missing last weekend, and that should be everything. Oh wait, I actually forgot to talk about Flock. So, Flock, I put him in F tier because just every time he's on screen, I roll my eyes. So, I just, you know, okay, he's not necessarily a bad character, and I instilled this into the Attack on Titan timeline. I get his character is that he's just, again, so empathetic for his own people that he's just willing to destroy the entire world and become imperialistic to protect the people he cares about. But also, every time he opens his goddamn mouth, I cannot help but just think, holy shit, Flock, shut the fuck up. So, that's why I put him in F tier. I don't hate his character. I just think he's just a little bit annoying.